Oh my!
I don't know. Come on, we got to get. What happened?
I don't know.
Because you're like,
I thought.
this thing has a countdown, and then it was frozen on 9 seconds, and I'm like, oh boy, welcome to the
I'm
new
sorry.
year.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Well, welcome to Sunday
Happy New Year, my
leftovers.
friend. Happy New
Right,
Year.
right. How is the world down in Chile?
We're doing fine here. Everything's
Hmm.
quite normal. Our summers are not that hot as in Austin,
Right,
but
right.
let me be honest, climate change is something quite real. So here, this summer, even even though it's not as hot as Austin, um,
It's
it's
hotter than it
hotter
should be.
than it should be. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
something
Well,
is happening,
we love to complain
and
about the weather in Texas, but we have nothing to complain about today because a lot of the country is under severe snowstorms, and it's just an
yes.
inconvenient 55 and sunny here.
Mm.
So here we are, brand new year. It seems like it's been a long time since we've done this because it probably seems like that because it actually has been a long time.
Yeah,
One of the
it's
things
been
we
a
do
long
at
time.
ANC is that between the holidays at the end of the year, in that black hole of time, we don't schedule services, and we just, you can do that if you want, but then people are traveling, and so we just kind of go with the flow and
Yes.
shut down operations until the first week of January. So
Yeah,
last
family
Sunday,
time is so important at the end of the year, and
I
it's
mean, we have to have a reason to go back to therapy all spring and summer. We have to.
that's a good reason,
I saw I
a good
right.
source of
I saw on
trauma.
Instagram. I saw on Instagram the picture of somebody saying, "Mama says shake what she gave you," and so she's shaking a therapy,
Yeah, Epiphany.
and it's really based on the idea right after the birth of Christ, which is what we celebrate during Advent and Christmas. The question then becomes like, for who is this? For who is he born? Like, so what's the scope here? You know
Right.
what I mean by the words? Like, what's the range of influence? And so the church, in the church's wisdom, and there isn't a lot of church wisdom, but there are a few things the church has done well
Some
throughout
of
the
that
centuries.
wisdom is on the lectionary.
Right. Someday I'm going to teach a seminary course in the church wisdom, and it'll be about class, and it's over. It's terrible. Anyway, um, part of the wisdom of the church, as far as I'm concerned, is to set Epiphany right behind Christmas, because the question has to be, who is this child born for? Like, so what is the scripture? We know from history that the friends of Jesus thought it was for them. We know that there were those who thought this is only for the Gentiles. Some thought this is only for the Jews. Some thought this is only for my family. We know that immediately what goes wrong in the circle of friends of Jesus is the scope of mission. And we know things now that we didn't know then. But I love Epiphany as a reminder. And of course, it begins with the story of the kings or the sorcerers or the warlocks or whatever you want to call them, the star watchers, the star
Star
loggers,
Wars.
the stargazers. Yeah, I like that. I like the star watchers. It sounds a little more benign than some of those
You
other
know,
words. We have big opinions about those words.
I like
But
to call them the pagan astrologers.
pagan astrologers.
It pushes all the buttons of on the Christian community.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we were clear. I mean, I was clear on Sunday. These are not converts to Judaism, and these are not converts to Christianity. In fact, Christianity didn't exist when they did this, when they came and did their visit. These were people who had for years seen signs in the cosmos of the birth of a special child. And the claim that I made on Sunday, which I'd never seen before, of course, I've been reading a lot more hard science this year than I probably ever have. Um, but the claim that I made that felt that made sense to me, and we can use this as a way to jump into this subject of the scope of the work of Jesus. But the claim that I made was, of course, they recognize the stars in the eyes of a baby boy because they've been looking at the stars for years, and of course, they understood that these two are both portents of the same event. Basically, these both are claims that God is with us. God is not outside. God is in the universe. God is in the cosmos. God is in the multiverse. However you want to look at that. So it's been an interesting couple of months for all my science majors. Now the English majors are probably starting to complain, like, "Where's the poetry? Where's the metaphor?" But I've just been dug down in a hole, bro. I cannot
Where's the
listen.
moth?
Listen. The Moss. That was how it all started. That's how I got
Yes.
back into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It was all Robin Wall Kimmerer's PhD work on moss, and then her book called Grading Sweetgrass, which of course to me is probably the most significant book I've read in the last 3 to 5 years. And people challenge me on that all the time, but it's a brilliant subject. I think what I'm doing is I'm reclaiming now that I am fully invested in a progressive view of the work of God in the world, meaning it's for all of its unfolding, meaning the mystics have always seen it, the fundamentalists could never see it. Now that I'm stepping into that space, I think what I'm doing is I'm going back and I'm replacing or I'm remodeling what I was taught about the world. And what I'm finding is that there's no place that I can determine that I have seen, and of course I'm no real scientist, but there's no place about which I'm curious that energy isn't present moving forward. And I think the limitation that I'm pushing on or tearing down or disassembling is the linguistic limitation that says this has to fit inside the story of our language system. Actually, language is all in it. It's my favorite of technologies that we've created with our mind is language, of course, but all of it is going to be limited, and all of it is going to end up dropping you off about 2 or 3 bus stops short of real revelation, right? So language has limitations. It doesn't
Correct.
go all the way there. So anyway, it's all just an attempt to reassemble the world in a way that says I can hold unique the story of Jesus born to people or born within a story that I cherish and love and I know a tremendous amount about because it's been my story. It's been what I've studied. I can cherish that at the same time understanding that this revelation fits everyone. So anyone who by virtue of history or chronology or pedigree or anything you can think of, anyone who by virtue of those things is excluded from this revelation, I think the revelation fails. I think
Mm.
everyone is involved. So that's my epiphany this year, right? So epiphany, we didn't talk about this a lot. Epiphany simply is a word in English that means it kind of identifies a moment in which your mind is opened,
Yeah.
a moment where your heart is opened. And so I think the beauty of the season of Epiphany is that we continue to live in this state of surprise, of
Right.
willingness to be surprised, right? I got to the very end of the sermon last week and talked about maybe these wise men weren't different because, or wise people weren't so different because they were wise. Maybe they just lived in awe, which I think we all have access to. And if
Right.
you ever forget what all looks like, hang out with a 2 or a 3-year-old child, and you'll be reminded really, really quickly what all
Right.
looks like. So in Spanish, I think that word would be asombro or something like that, right?
Asombro. Right.
What would asombro, right? So
Asombro.
I think the challenge for us is to live in a season of asombro, a season of awe, in which we are consistently surprised, specifically by the universal scope of the work of love. How I would call it, that's what I would say about the work of Jesus. If the name Jesus locates you too specifically in a particular chronology of Judeo-Christian history that gives birth to Western society, if the name Jesus locates you too deeply in a story that you can't think of the rest of the world, then name what the work of Jesus did, which is it demonstrated unconditional universal love to the entire world.
Right.
So this is when we look at the scope of that work. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful season, to be honest.
You know, probably as you know, in Latin America, Protestant churches doesn't celebrate so much any any season rather than Easter and Christmas, basically, and not even
Yeah.
Advent, just the specific celebrations. But you know, Epiphany is something that for me that reminds me that we are not the honors of the truth. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes we think that we have all the things under control and we have all
All
the
right.
revelation, and there's a wise man that came and point to a different place that you are not looking for. You are with your eyes, well, in this case, the priest and all that people
Mm-hmm.
surrounding hero, they were looking at the text, and they didn't
Yeah.
they didn't look at the skies. And
Yes. Yes.
eventually people came into our lives that they are looking to a different
Mm-hmm.
place, and
Yeah.
eventually you start to learn about
Mm.
that people. And this is something
Yeah.
that keeps me humble, and it has the potential to keep us all humble. So
I think,
so
yeah. So the invitation, when you add the invitation of a new year to the revelation of Epiphany, I guess the question we're asking, and this is how I framed my thoughts on Sunday, is what are we going to drag into this new year? And so what I would
right,
suggest we drag into it, what are we bringing with? What I would suggest we bring with us, honestly, is only the Jesus that all good people with open hearts who are seeking the divine. Let's only bring the Jesus that fits and makes sense to them. So here's a warning. Here's a warning. That Jesus is going to sound a little bit more like, let's be good humans, let's be kind, let's be loving, let's leave blessings and enrichment everywhere we go to everyone we speak. The Jesus that we're going to need to leave behind is the one that says, everybody has to convert to my way of thinking. I have to go around the globe and start converting cultures to the way I see Jesus. You get what I'm saying? So the
yeah,
Jesus that we bring with us is the Jesus that lives well in your apartment complex or in your neighborhood, or the Jesus that plays well at the Thanksgiving table where you sit among people who see the world very differently. That's what I'm suggesting,
yeah,
is that we bring with us the Jesus that made sense to the mystics, not to the legalists and the fundamentalists, right? So
right,
your point about reading stars and reading the text, I think what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to harmonize both, right? So the fabric of the cosmos telling us a story. What is that story telling us? Well, even a rudimentary introduction to science would tell you the fabric of the cosmos is telling us that all things are in movement towards higher states of organization. All
right,
things are adapting and learning and adjusting. All things are expanding. The universe itself is expanding. We knew that before we knew anything else. In fact, one of I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson on a lecture, and he says we knew that the universe was expanding before we didn't know that it wasn't static. Like we had no idea, the quantum world of thought hadn't existed yet, but we still knew it was expanding. So even a rudimentary introduction to the world of science says all things are in movement towards something, and not towards chaos necessarily, towards global organization. So so the mystics have always seen that. And the Jesus that we need to bring with us now into 2024 is the one that will see that and say, that's part of a big truth. So the fabric of the cosmos, or even the text of the cosmos, if you want to say it that way, for theologians, it's important. One eye in the stars, figuratively or also literally, and one in the text. And so what are we doing? We're looking at the future, we're looking at
right,
the past, and we're saying, how do we live now, right? The
right.
great Francis Schaeffer question, how then shall we live? That's the question. So the court of Herod, of course, we have to be gracious to them. They were living in fear of their lives, most likely. But the first thing Herod does is he summons the great thinkers of his day. And the first thing they say is, well, of course it's going to be in Bethlehem. So they knew the text. They weren't watching the movements around them. So as we close this, let's remind ourselves in 2024, ANC, let's be better about harmonizing text and the cosmos around us, because the people around us um, deserve to live in the presence of people who live in a consistent witness of unconditional love for all things. Bottom line, doesn't matter if they ever come to your church, doesn't matter if they convert from Zoroastrian priests to whatever. We know this is not a conversion story. I know Christians love to pitch this as a conversion story. It's not a conversion story, friends. This is
It's
a
not.
story of smart people who understood both the text and the stars, bearing witness to an adjacent story, but then going back and probably being way better Zoroastrian priests. I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah,
The need to compress everything into a single storyline might be my least favorite part about the evolution of the human brain. All of the ways that we've evolved and adapted to accommodate living in our world are beautiful, except the one that says, and oh, by the way, this is the only way to live. Like, we've got to outgrow that. We've got to outgrow that. I think we can. I think we can. I think we are.
I think we can, but I think it will take a lot of work, and that is
Yeah.
one of the things that we need to be. We should be intentional
Yeah.
because there's process in life that doesn't came organically. You should be
Right.
intentional, and I think for the church, I'm not talking about ANC, but the church in general,
Yeah. Yeah.
we must be intentional, trying to move into that direction, and it's going to be
What's super,
hard.
yeah, well, it's going to be this. We're going to have to release the storylines. What we're going to have to release is the fact that we think we sit at the center of it. That's what we're going to have to release, right? I just finished the 6-part documentary. Of course, I did. It's called The Brain by David Eagleman. He's a brilliant researcher, neuroscientist, and he gets all the way to the end of the 6th part. And what he's talking about at this point now is how do we meaningfully impact our own brain evolution so that we can get past some of this self-obsession about me being the point of view, right? So it's funny because scientists will eventually become theologians if we let them run, and theologians will eventually become scientists if we let them run. If we give them enough kite string to fly uninhibited, all questions come back to the same sort of circle. So
Right.
anyway, 2024 promises to be an exciting year. We're doing a lot of deep thinking at ANC. We're doing a lot of considering about what are we involved in, what should we be more involved in, what are some things we can do better. We're asking hard questions, and I think we're setting ourselves up for a journey in which the Jesus that Wiseman found stars in his eyes is the Jesus that fits in the world, in Austin and around the world where people join us from. So
Right.
it's exciting.
It
Yeah, it's
is.
exciting. It's good stuff.
It's,
When are you coming back to Austin? You're coming next month, aren't you?
I hope
For a
so.
visit?
Some stuff are changing for that meeting with Helman now, but
Yeah.
probably if the meeting, uh, I mean, if we make the meeting, it will be probably in a different city. But the plans are that I will go to Austin anyways. So
That'd be great.
I'm
Well, we
planning
miss you, man. We would love to see
to
you.
have a few nice, interesting.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
I
blessings on
hope.
you. Sunday leftovers. Dana, board member, our out of town board member, speaks this Sunday, so
Yeah,
we
no,
will all be in our seats and ready to go. But thanks, Caesar.
we are
Happy
so lame. I'm so
Happy
sorry,
Epiphany.
guys.